Thursday, everybody. Josh here with On the Wrong Lead, joined as always with Andrew Champagne for another episode of Drank and Champagne. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. We had a last minute wardrobe change right before the show. My fiance's class t shirts came. I was wearing mine, and it was one of those designs that had a circular thing of white on it. And with the way this light up here was hitting it, it looked like my sternum had a halo.
Hmm.
So had to do a last minute wardrobe change, but it gets the blood going. It's like on the West Wing when President Bartlett's wife cut his tie right before going out on the stage just so he would get the blood going. And then I remember, wait a minute, Josh has no idea what I'm talking about because he hates good television.
All I know is that Dule Hill was in West Wing.
Yes, and he was great.
Yeah.
That's more than I figured you knew.
My wife and I's favorite show is a show called Psych,
Yep, that's one of my
and that
fiance's favorites.
Dule Hill's in there. So
Yep.
I only know like they make tons of references in the show about like his previous roles. Like they talk about the movie Holes, and obviously there's a whole thing where he goes around
Whole
saying,
thing, holes, ha ha,
"Yeah,
ha ha ha
Holes," and
ha.
then yes, Mr. President.
Yep.
So, but yeah, some housekeeping. Uh, Andrew, I have a hotel booked for March Madness.
I am so proud
So
of you. That's going to be great. Going to be a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun, man.
yeah, so I'm gonna say right now it's probably about 90% that I go. I just figured I would book it now, um, because I looked and I had basically all the mid to low tier properties for MGM were comped for me. It took me a while to book it because the past month you haven't been able to access their website.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was able to book. I booked Park MGM, I believe. Yeah, Park MGM, which is in the center strip. Nice place to stay, non-smoking. Uh, I also figured it would be a good spot if I decided to actually like pay for a table or something. Um,
Pay
so
for a table?
yeah, pay for a table for like to watch the games.
Pay for a table?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that goes against my religion. You're hitting me right
So are you
here, right
saying
in the Brooks Brothers logo. See right here, right
so
here.
you're
You're hitting me
saying if
right in the
I
chin.
if I paid for a table, you and your dad wouldn't come?
I don't know. I'm just giving you shit because
Okay.
the notion of paying for a spot to sit to watch basketball is so inherently ridiculous to me, but that's the way Vegas is now. You have to, pay up for that if you want the privilege of being able to sit and be what people in Las Vegas see you as less than ideal customer because you're only doing one thing as opposed to four or five things while on the go and you're betting, through a person at the window as opposed to through one of these things.
Yeah, funny story. I've been to Vegas once during March Madness. It was a complete accident. It was after COVID. It was like, yeah, I think it was a year after, so it must have been 2021.
Oh
Um,
gosh, you were there at the height of the we want all our money and we want it right now era.
yeah, so we and the only reason we knew this is because we were there on the weekend. We had it comped, and we stayed. I forgot where we were staying, but my wife and I we really like this cocktail lounge in Park MGM called Juniper Lounge. They specialize in gin based cocktails, but they have a huge list of cocktails. It's a nice little spot. If you go for happy hour, usually I think the drinks are like $10, which in Vegas is super cheap. So especially for like an actual cocktail, right? But anyways, we went to book one day and like nothing was available. So finally my wife called and they're like, "Well, we're only reserving tables for half a day. So you could either have it all in the morning or all in the afternoon." And we were like, "Why?" And they're like, "Oh, because for the games." And I was like, "Oh, it's for the basketball." Um, so my wife looked into it because she's like, "Yeah, whatever." And it was something like 250, $300, right?
You know
But
what you need on your soundboard? You need a laugh track for that because that is just absolutely horrible. Now, if it was that week in 2021, I can attest because my dad and I were at the Flamingo. They did a piss poor job of marketing that seats cost money. We showed up, and instead of the 8, 9, 10 rows of reasonably comfortable chairs that had been at the Flamingo Sportsbook and that are there now, there were individual spots of either 2 or 4. They were trying to do social distancing where they could, available for $80 a seat. And the racebook side was reserved for people platinum or higher. Thankfully, someone who was very, very nice had 2 seats and was able to let us camp out there. If you are out there, by the way, thank you. I owe you one. But that was probably the first, wait a minute, they're selling spots in a sports book to watch the games moment. And that's why I react to, wait, paying money for a table? What? Like my dad and I wound up,
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
and you didn't let me finish my story. It was food and beverage credit, so it was basically a food and beverage minimum of 250.
Okay.
Um, so so really, right, like you're paying for it, but you're not paying for it. And so my wife and I, we started calculating how much how much we would have to drink in order to get that high. And we realized that we would just be blackout drunk if we did that. If food was included, we probably could have hit it and we probably would have done it. But at first they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, we'll have food and you can order from like a place and we'll." And then we she called back and they're like, "Actually, we're not going to have food. It's going to be drinks only." It's like, 250 or 300 whatever split among 4 or 5 people, fine, right?
Yeah.
For a whole day of drinking, you'll hit that. For
Yeah.
2 people, that's borderline dangerous.
Unless you decide to go the route of just saying, screw it, give me a $300 bottle of wine,
Oh,
which I
that's a good
could
point.
sort of understand. But at the same time, if you're paying that kind of money for anything in Las Vegas, you better be able to get a show out of it. Which brings to mind something my father is very excited about for the trip we're taking next month. Josh, we got tickets to a show at the Sphere.
You too?
No. It's I think it's the movie that Darren Aronofsky did.
Oh, that's
And
right. They have something else. They have like a movie playing or something
yeah,
too. Yeah.
so we're going there Thanksgiving night at 7 o'clock. And we apparently got 400 level seats, like nosebleed stuff. My dad's been reading reviews that it's like the nosebleed seats at the old Yankee Stadium, for those of you out there that have been to the cathedral of baseball that was the old Yankee Stadium. The new Yankee Stadium is a soulless place where people play baseball. At any rate, excited about that. And I will absolutely report back with anything that you hear there. But it's good that you're going to be out there in Vegas for March Madness. It'll be a lot of fun. Last year, my dad and I wound up at Palace Station, which is one of the few casinos that was not charging for seats, which was great. But of course, it's off the beaten path. There's not a lot that's close to it. The Chipotle, not it wasn't Chipotle, it was Chick-fil-A across the street was a savior during lunchtime hours, especially when you needed a breath of fresh air amidst some of the smoke. So, yeah, it's a fun time. There's always something to do there, and it'll be nice to be able to have some fun out there. And I hope that the 90% chance you outlined actually materializes because, in addition to March Madness, you've got other forms of sports betting, you've got horse race betting. My biggest score of the last March Madness trip was a pick four at Oaklawn that paid a little over $600 and bankrolled the trip. So take them where you can get them.
Yeah, my wife's not going to be able to make it. It sounds like. So I'm trying to see if um, my friend Gary or anybody else will come out for it. So maybe I'll even ask my brother. I don't know. See if he wants to come. I've been trying to get him out. Um, there was a there was a time I was playing. I think the Hawthorne tournament, and I was in like third or fourth place, and I texted him. I was like, hey, like I'm in the hunt for an NHC seat. If I get it, are you coming to Vegas with me? And he's like, okay, if you get an NHTC, I'll come to Vegas. And so like when I told him, I was like, hey, I didn't get it, but I'm still gonna go. I'm gonna play in the tournament. He was planning on coming, and then like in the last minute, he kind of just was like, I couldn't go. So we'll see if I can convince him. But yeah, yeah, it was. I'm glad to get that kind of crossed off. I wanted to get that booked before I forgot and before stuff started getting more expensive. I had already seen like 2 3 nights ago. I had MGM Grand comped, and by the time I went to book yesterday or a day before, it was already gone. It wasn't available. So um, I was good. I was glad to get Park MGM booked. And yeah, I looked at flights. I have like $400 or $500 in Southwest credit right now from delays and cancellations and stuff like that. So um, it was a little expensive still, but we'll get it. I know a friend of the show, Bill, who listens.
Bill,
He
Bill,
I
Bill,
believe he's going
Bill.
to be in Vegas this weekend. For is it this weekend? When do the Patriots play the Raiders in Las Vegas?
I'm not 100% sure, but if it's not this weekend, it's at some point this month. And
Yep.
I really hope he didn't pay too much for tickets because that sounds like an absolutely horrible matchup.
So actually, what funny story? He was messaging the group today, and he was like, my dad keeps on asking me to buy tickets, and then he's got like the Braveheart hold." So he's waiting for those prices to drop. So
Yep. And trust
hopefully,
me, they're going to go low because the Raiders are not good and the Patriots are worse.
oh man. But yeah, that's he should have a fun time. I'm hoping he reports back a little bit with how bad it is with all the construction for F1 and stuff. Because I heard like even since you've gone, it's gotten worse. So
That's not a shock. And it's going to be a little bit interesting when my dad and I go the very next week because we're staying off the strip at the Orleans. And Josh, I think that's a very good call by us because there's going to be carnage that they're going to have to clean up from as far as temporary stands, temporary hospitality areas, just a mess. What's not a mess, though, is the fact that this coming Friday at Keeneland, you've got a 10 race card. And we were talking in an extensive pre-show meeting. We spent hours trying to figure out what we were going to do here. And then I looked at the entries for Friday at Keeneland. The field sizes for the late pick 5, which begins in race 6, 11, 16, 16, 16, 11. So yeah, we're going to tackle the late pick 5 at Keeneland that covers the back half of the Friday the 13th card, and hopefully we'll wind up lucky on a very unlucky day. And I got to tell you, Josh, I'm feeling really good about this because unlike most times we handicap a multi-race sequence, I have a single and you're actually using it.
yeah, and it doesn't seem there are places I think where you and I differ a little bit, but this might be the closest that we've been on a sequence
Take
in
that
quite
for
some
whatever
time.
you will. There are some people who will say that's a very bad omen for you, but those people probably aren't listening. And if you are, know that I know you're out there.
We'll start with race 6 here, mile and 16th on the dirt, 3-year-olds and up. And yeah, like you said, we got a full field of 11 here. Your morning line favorite is going to be the 3 telephone talker at 5-2. Um, you know, I think this race kind of starts and stops depending on what you think of the pace scenario here. And upon my quick perusal of the pace scenario, you got an E8, you got an E7, you got an E6, and you got 3 EP5s. And that kind of sets out some alarm bells here. And I'm looking for a horse coming from off the pace. I got 3 horses in here. I got an A and I got 2 Bs. But my single A is going to be 7-2, number 6, Mr. Barely here for George Leonard. Rafael Bejarano rides. And this is a horse that's shown a very, very good late kick And if you kind of go back through the last couple of races, the horse has definitely closed pretty well, but hasn't necessarily gotten the type of setup that I think this horse needs to win a race. The pace has just not really come together. If you look at some of these early pace figures here, you don't have anything, you know, really high, but you still have this over 90 here late pace figure. So I think in this race, the pace is going to come back to Mr. Barely in this spot. I think is going to be able to actually close into this. Is dropping humongously in class, over two classes, going from a claiming 50,000 to a claiming 16,000. So I think that's going to be enough here to set it up for Mr. Barely. I do have two other horses I kind of like in this spot, but before I get to them, Andrew, where did you land?
Sure. So I think this is a fantastic betting race in large part because I do not like your morning line favorite. That's horse number 3 in the program. And if you take a look at your ultimate past performances or your daily racing form past performances or whatever, you see a very consistent horse on turf and synthetic. If you look at the horse's dirt record, the horses run okay. Not great, but okay. I don't see a horse that wants dirt. And I feel like if that horse wanted dirt, it would have run on dirt a long, long time before now. I see a horse that has benefited from meltdowns in the past. That race 2 back at Colonial completely fell apart. And that was a $16,000 claimer. It wasn't like Telephone Talker was beating horses that are better than what show up in here. Could Telephone Talker boom us out of the pick 5 first leg? Maybe. But I can't bet that horse at this price, and I can't advise you all out there to do that either. I'm not a huge fan of Huge Bigley, who I think is your likely second choice. That's a horse that won 2 starts back at Delaware Park, but I just was not crazy about that particular race either. It was an off the turf race, and I wasn't crazy about My Barely either. Josh, I see where you're going, and I do think that's a potential clunk up horse. But that horse hasn't won in a long, long, long time. Will I be shocked if that horse runs second or third at a little bit of a price? No. But between his tendency to hang and the fact that we're dealing with a mile and a 16th at Keeneland, which is a short stretch race, where I'm not saying closers can't win, but it's a little harder unless you have an absolutely perfect trip. I can't use that horse in this spot. We do, however, have one horse in common that I believe you've used as a B, and that horse is 15 to 1 on the morning line. I'm referring to number 1 Code Runner, who comes back to the dirt. And I think is a big player if this horse runs back to some of those dirt races from early 2023 and late 2022. In fact, if you look at October 14th, 2021, I know that that's 2 years ago, but this horse beat $32,000 claimers at this very route of ground. I think this might be the closer you want, has been trying much, much, much tougher for most of the last couple of years, gets significant class relief, does need to work out a trip from the rail, but 15 to 1 seems like a massive overlay on that one. So going to use that one. If you're looking for another closer to potentially clunk up, I would use number 8 Swing Low, who's another that I'll admit hasn't won in quite a while, 0 for 9 in 2023, but did at least win 3 times in 2022 and takes what I think is a class drop off of allowance and optional claiming races into this $16,000 claimer for capable connections. Both horse and rider know how to win races, and anything close to those races at Delaware Park would, I think, make him a bit of a player. I'll also use horse number 7, Populist, stretching back out to 2 turns, second off a brief layoff. I thought the win 3 back at Belterra was fine, has some early speed, doesn't necessarily need the lead in order to run well, though. I think Populist might be a little bit better at a mile and a 16th than at the 7 furlong distance that tripped him up last time out when he set what I thought was a pretty fast early pace. You see 22 and 4, 45 and 2. I think if you use a speed horse, it's going to be Populist. But I'm taking a stand against some of the likely favorites in here. 1, 7, and 8 for me to kick things off. And if I'm right, Josh, we knock out a lot of tickets right off the jump.
Yeah, and I do have both the 1 and the 8 as Bs. Um, the 8 horse Swing Low. I'll start with that horse. One thing you'll notice, if you kind of go through the horses' PPs, and you look at the last couple races, right? You see some decent races, you see some improvement, and you just kind of start looking back. The horse is going a mile and a half, mile and a quarter was on turf. So I really think that this mile and a 16th distance on the dirt seems to be what this horse wants to do. So third time on this distance, on this ground. Running back on dirt rather. I think this is going to be an improvement. I think this is going to be a good spot here for Swing Low. Gets a good jock in James Graham here. So I like Swing Low, and then the one code runner. Similar to what you said. You start crossing out some of these turf races, these races going way long. And you see these mile and 16th dirt races. Yeah, we're going back a year or two, or heck, even the Pimlico race from earlier this year, and this horse seems to fit. It's got some really dirty up form. I don't know what they were doing. And Kaio Carmori, sorry, is actually 22% going turf to dirt, with a plus 24-cent ROI on that. So interesting to note there. But I definitely think that dirt is the ticket here for the one horse in the sixth race.
And look, I got to tell you, it doesn't get a lot easier as you go through this sequence. You've got 5 excellent betting races in this particular spot. And I got to tell you, as we look at race number 7, if you're watching us on YouTube, by the way, if you're watching us on YouTube, go on down below, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, really helps us out. But this is the sort of race that I think is more true to form for us, Josh, because the very first horse in this field that you have as an A, I dislike intensely. So, Josh, tell me why I'm wrong about number 1, a credit.
Um, so number one, a credit. You know, I I actually really like speed on turf. And your inside drawn speed is going to be a credit. Last time out at Churchill Downs, went wire to wire, beat a horse that is in this race, Gray's Fable, beat Cellist, who is in a stakes race later on in this card.
Yes,
Um,
he's in the Sycamore.
yeah. So, kept some pretty good company there, one wire to wire. And if you go back and kind of look at the Kentucky Downs race, you know, was off the pace and, 3 lengths behind at first call. And that just wasn't where you were going to be winning any kind of races at Kentucky Downs for most of the meet. So, um, I think that helped. That helped that horses coming in here off of good form. And if you cross out all those synthetic tries, I mean, this horse really hasn't done anything wrong. I mean, these numbers or these Briz figures really really fit here. So I don't know. I think it credits in here with a really big shot being here on the engine. Um, the other horse I did like in here was the 8 King Vega, and that was for similar reasons. I think this is another pace horse. Has been on the engine the last 2 times out, both going a mile and an eighth at Colonial and a mile at Pimlico, and kind of went ran basically just as well in both. Just missing out by 3 3/4 lengths, finishing second in a Pimlico grade 3 at Pimlico here. So going to have a little bit easier company. The winner of that race is in here. But if you kind of look at the pace figures, um, they thought that was a very, very fast pace. Now, 23 and 2, 47 and 2 on turf. I mean, if you're a good speed horse, you probably hold with that. Obviously, um, didn't end up holding on there. The late pace figure came back really, really low. But I think is going to have a softer pace in this spot. And I think that King Vega, if John Velasquez can go ahead and, just kind of, keep the horse running at a little bit of a slower pace. I know I think King Vega's in here with a big shot. And those are kind of my 2 top picks here, the 1 and the 8.
Sure. So, my counter on horse number 1 in the program, who I think may well wind up your favorite, that's a credit. The two races recently that this horse has won, and by recently, I mean last time out and on September 5th, 2021 at Kentucky Downs, I thought got picture perfect trips on both of those occasions that don't seem likely to replicate themselves in this spot because I think there's other speed in the race. And you mentioned King Vega, who I actually prefer. Also, this turf course at Keeneland to this point in the meet has not been kind to early speed. There have been handicappers that are very prominent on social media, most recently Kyle Levy from FanDuel TV, who have gone on record as saying closers on the turf at Keeneland. And watching the races the last couple of days, I mean, all you got to do is look at the Turf Mile event from last Saturday when Up to the Mark somehow got up despite what seemed like an absolutely brutal trip. For me, a credit is a bet against at his likely price. You mentioned King Vega. I like King Vega a little bit in this spot. I think that's the pace type that you want to use if you can. But I'm going to throw a couple of other prices at you, one of which is right to the outside of a credit. That's number 2, Fuerte Ventura. And you mentioned the what has this horse gotten wrong test. Do me a favor. Draw a line through the October 29th race here at Keeneland, which was the grade 3 Bryan Station, where this horse was going up against Belnikov and Witt, both of whom would be 1-9 against this group. Look at those last 5 starts and tell me what you've got.
Got a
You've
lot
got
of seconds and firsts.
a really nice horse with some tactical speed that also has some flexibility for Florent Giroux. Last time out, ran a good second over at Kentucky Downs, probably a little closer than I think he wanted to be on that particular occasion, but speed was king that day. It wasn't Kentucky Downs, it was Ellis Park, which was even kinder to speed. Very different turf course than what you see at Keeneland. But I see Fort Canterbury, I see Horseshoe, Indiana, I see Saratoga, I see Kentucky Downs. You go back, you see Gulfstream Park and Monmouth. They've gotten the frequent flyer miles with this freaking horse, Josh. And I think you're going to get a price on a horse that is absolutely in form that gets Lasix back too. Remember, hasn't run on Lasix the last couple of starts being in stakes company. I don't necessarily think Lasix is a performance enhancer. I do think it is a performance enabler. And I think Fuerte Ventura is going to have every chance at a big price. The other one that I'm going to use, and I'm going to go 5 deep in this spot. We'll talk a little bit more about the ticket once we get through all the races. But, Josh, what do we do with number 11 Injunction, who has run once in the last 11 months? But take a look at some of those races in 2022 where you see this horse running up against the likes of Proxy, Senor Buscador, 3 Technique. If this horse is ready to run and he takes to turf, which I don't think is going to be a problem given the last out 3rd place finish at Kentucky Downs, doesn't he stand a really big chance at hitting the board or winning at a big number? I know post 11 is not ideal, but I look at this horse and I see some big numbers in the form. I think he's got every chance. That's an A horse for me.
Yeah. And, once again, kind of had a little bit of a Z pattern here last time out, Kentucky Downs, was 2 lengths back, 3 lengths back, and, you weren't winning from there.
No, and I know the post is not ideal. That's probably part of the reason we're going to get 10-1. But that horse showed a lot of talent last year and danced some big dances. Again, there's so much back class with this horse, and the horse showed enough on turf last time out, being fairly close to what was a very hot pace. I know it was Kentucky Downs, but 22 to the quarter, 44 and 3 to the half. I don't think they're going to be going that fast early on in this spot. And I think Injunction has enough speed to be able to work out his own trip and clear most of the field. So that's another big one that I'm going to be using. I'm going 5 deep in here, as I've mentioned. I'm using 2, 5, 8, 9, 11. Not a lot in the way of super strong opinions other than if a critic wins, I lose.
Yeah, the only other horse I was going to use, so I have the 1 and the 8 here as A's. I do have a B, and that's the 3, Hosier. And this is kind of similar to what we've been talking about a little bit about these Kentucky Downs races. If you go to back the Kentucky Downs preview at Ellis, closed and won a pretty decent race there at 4-1, and then came right back into the million. And I mean, just was never going to win from that spot. There's just no way that that horse is going to win. And so I'm looking for a little bit of improve based off that last effort at Kentucky Downs. If runs back to some of the figures he was running earlier in the summer, I think he's in here with a puncher's chance. And you're getting 12-1. You get Alex Achard here, Rudy Brissett. They're hitting at 22% the last 2 months. So I don't know. I think that this might be a sneaky little play here. Running against the bias last time in way over his head. Ran a nice fourth in the Wise Dan. To finish fourth behind 3 horses that would be, I don't know, 2-5, 3-5 in this race if either any of them were in here. So,
I mean,
um,
set piece came out of that race and wound up winning the Arlington Million.
yep.
So, yeah, I can't fault that as a potential play in here. And again, it's not like I've got a lot of confidence in the favorites. If you're looking for a closer, maybe that's the one that you want. I think that one might be up a little closer, though, than maybe you think. Just looking back at the 2022 form, this is a horse that had enough early speed to make the lead in a couple of stakes races late in the year. So I don't think this is going to be a dyed in the wool closer, but has certainly shown some versatility this year that he hadn't shown previously. So that's a plus.
Yep. And then I think you had one more horse that you didn't talk about, the 9 that you liked a little bit in here.
The 9, yeah, that was one of the ones that I was going to use. And honestly, it's more so looking like the Mike Maker horse that always wins these kinds of races, the high level allowances that just seem to pop up. This is a horse that earlier this year was fourth beaten 5 lengths, put up to third in the grade 1 turf classic at Churchill Downs. Did no running in the Manhattan, came back out of that race, probably needed the start in the lure, but ran very well at Kentucky Downs, was second behind Wolfie's Dyna Ghost that particular day. Tyler Gaffleone sees fit to ride. He probably had some options. Another horse with some tactical speed that doesn't necessarily need the lead in order to run well. Just a horse I couldn't leave off the ticket. And again, I'm going 5 deep, so it's not like I have a super strong opinion there, but you see a horse with these types of connections and back races that absolutely fit, and a horse that's probably not going to be favored, that's a horse you need to use if you like the horse at all.
All right. Let's move on to race 8, which is a mile and 16th on a dirt, maiden 100K. Um, and yeah, this for me was possibly the toughest race of the sequence. I know you went 5 deep last race. I went 2-2 here, 2 A's, 2 B's. And yeah, I think the race kind of starts and stops with what you think of the short price horses, the 4 genetics, as well as the 9 intricate at 9-2. I like both of them, and I kind of feel like those are going to be the 2 I lean heavily on. Top pick is probably the 4 genetics for Bill Mott here. This this type of prep that he does for his maidens, this is just what he does, right? He runs them short twice and then he stretches them out. He's 23% when doing that. And you get Joel Rosario here riding for this riding here, and you just have 2 decent efforts, compared to what some of these other horses have put in so far. And I just think that this horse kind of lays over the field a little bit with those 2 figures. And I just think that those first 2 races were kind of preps for this. And I think the 4 genetics is going to be pretty hard to beat. I did also like the 9 intricate. If the 4 for some reason doesn't fire, the 9 intricate ran a really, really nice race last time, going 6 furlongs at Churchill Downs. You don't want to close in that type of race. and this horse just completely was 7.5 back at second call, and finished fifth, but only beaten 2.25 lengths, so made up those 5 lengths at the end. So I don't know if it was a prep. I don't know what the plan was there, but the plan being that far back at Churchill Downs, going 6 furlongs, is not to win. So I think stretching this horse out was probably always the plan. So I like the two short prices here, the 4 and the 9. Andrew, what do you like here?
We agree. And I was there for Genetics' debut. In fact, you were too. I thought she ran a very nice race that day. She did not break well. She got rushed up, made the lead, and sort of hung. 7 furlongs is a very tough distance to debut at. So I'm not going to hold that against her. She came back, didn't break well again. She gets 2 turns. She's bred to want about 9 turns. Buy Tapit out of a point given mare. That is distance top and bottom for a trainer whose horses tend to get better as they go longer. This is probably a now or never spot for Genetics, at least at this level, because this is a race she's probably supposed to win. I'm using Genetics, and I'm going to use Intricate as well. You mentioned it. You don't want to close going 6 furlongs at Churchill. She might have gotten aided a little bit by a race that sort of fell apart. You see a 21-3 first quarter, slowing down to 111 at the wire for 6 furlongs. This one was showing interest late, and that's certainly a plus because first time starters don't usually do that. The question you have to ask yourself is, was she moving forward, or was she one paced and was everyone else stopping? Either way, 2 turns should be up her alley, but that's just one of those things you have to think about with a race shape like that, where I don't think there's as much early speed signed on. The other horse that I do want to use, and this is probably a watch the tote board horse. I'm looking at number 6, Ariana's Pearl, by Curlin out of a Bernardini mare. You can't get much more stamina and a pedigree than what Ariana's Pearl has. Ran first time out at Delaware, going 6 furlongs, and ran what I thought was a pretty similar race to the one the 9 ran first time out, sort of one paced, made up a lot of ground late. It says steady close. To me, that indicates this horse wants to go 2 turns. Gee, a Graham motion horse that wants ground. I am shocked. Shocked, I say. I see Flavian Pratt sign on when he had some options, and I don't think we're going to get 10-1. I think if you see 7-2 on the tote board, that means this horse is live. Either way, I think this is a horse that is a must use in those multi race exotics, and a horse that wasn't necessarily expected to run all that well first time out, going 6 furlongs, which isn't what she wants to do for a trainer whose horses tend to get better with experience. I think this might be the time for Ariana's Pearl, especially since, while I respect the favorites, I don't think either of them are unbeatable.
Yeah. I agree with you. And like I said, I have two B's in this spot, which kind of just tells you like I think the 4 or the 9 should win this race, but these are 2 year olds and late season 2 year olds, and just weird stuff happens. The 7 Carrara here for Kenny McPeak and Brian Hernandez Jr. I I think maybe this is where the pace comes from in this race. His show has been very, very close up on the pace the last 2 times. It was up on a 23-1 pace, going 7 furlongs. I think the stretch out might be able to help measure that pace a little bit more. And Yeah, I mean, you do have street sense on the top, which does aid in the distance pedigree. But I think the 7 Carrara is coming in here with a nice work last out at Churchill Downs, firing a bullet. I think it was definitely going to be pretty interesting here. 5-1 on the morning line. We'll see what kind of price we get. And then the 2 enigmatic here for Brad Cox and Flo Giroux. Ran at Kentucky Downs last time, and we've been talking a lot about these horses that have been going wire to wire. This is one that did not go wire to wire. Led at the first two calls, faded down the stretch, finished fourth by 7 lengths. Um, but some horses just don't like Kentucky Downs. And when I look at this horse, I mean, I don't know how much I think that this is a turf horse. You got Giants Causeway on the bottom, which can run on anything, and you got West Coast on the top. I don't have the stats in front of me, but flatter. I'm not really feeling the this is a turf horse kind of thing here. So maybe that last time was just to help build some stamina into the horse. Um, Brad Cox, second time out, 28%. Second time at a route, 32%. You're getting 8-1 in the morning line. This is another horse that interests me. Might also be your speed, and it's going to be inside drawn to the other speed. Um, with the exception of maybe the one. Maybe the one also shows some speed, but um, yeah, I think the two enigmatic. Is an interesting horse in this spot. Using him as a B. Brad Cox at Keeneland's always dangerous.
I have no idea what to make of Enigmatic in this spot. They debut
So
this
he lives up
horse.
to his name.
Yes, precisely. I didn't even have to make the dad joke. I am so proud of you. Um, if they had thought this horse was a miler, there have to be two turn spots, either here or at Churchill. So why did they run her at Kentucky Downs? Furthermore, why have the last several works been over the synthetic surface at Turfway? I'm not saying this horse can't run. I'm not saying this horse can't improve. I'm just saying I have no idea what to make of this horse. Could this horse potentially improve second time out? Maybe they wanted to run longer earlier in the season and Kentucky Downs was just the way to do that. I don't know. But I feel like it's just as likely this horse shows some speed and stops and then winds up being a maiden claimer as it does this horse goes early, improves position, and runs off the screen. I didn't particularly care for the horse at the likely price. I feel like if anyone else trained this horse, you'd be getting 12 to 1, 15 to 1, and we're not going to be getting that price come post time because of how good Brad Cox is and how high a percentage his horses win at. So if this one winds up beating me, I'll live with it.
All right, let's move on to race 9, where Andrew, you have a single.
Yes, I do. I have a single in the grade 3 Sycamore going a mile and a half on the turf, and it's one of the better distance turf horses that we have here in America who I don't think would have been totally out of place in a couple of weeks at the Breeders' Cup. That's number 2, Red Knight. This is a horse that earlier this year won the grade 1 Man o' War at Belmont Park, closed from very far back amidst a very slow pace. Belmont Park's turf course is like green pavement. If you look at the fractions and you see 6 furlongs in 115, a horse that is eighth more than 5 lengths off the pace is not supposed to win. He did. His last couple of races have been solid, not spectacular, but solid. He was fourth in the Manhattan behind Up to the Mark. He was third behind Therapist in the United Nations. I think, have a great trip on that particular occasion. He was very wide turning for home, and I thought surrendered enough ground to where he should have been a closer up second as opposed to third beaten 2 1/4. And then they ran him at Kentucky Downs. And we have been saying on this show a lot, you wanted to be on the lead at Kentucky Downs. Red Knight wasn't. That's not Red Knight's game. Finishes fourth, beaten 2 lengths, despite this field walking up front. Josh, I see a horse that is proven going a mile and a half. I see a horse that has run well here previously. I see a horse that is in very good form and hasn't run a clunker all year long. And I see a horse that's probably not going to be favored because Mr. Appleby is shipping a horse across the pond to run here. Sign me up. Red Knight is my best bet of the Friday program at Keeneland. He is a single for me in the Sycamore. I like this horse. I like this horse a lot.
Yeah, I everything you said, especially that last race, Get Smoking went wire to wire in that race at a pretty big number, if I remember correctly. Um, and yeah, I think Red Knight's going to be tough to beat in this spot, especially with the way you said the Keeneland turf has been playing. Probably the best closer in this field, is proven at this trip, is proven at this track. Um, so yeah, I love Red Knight in this spot. You know, you were talking a little bit of crap about this three bold act. Um, you know, I have him marked down as an A. I think it's more of a. I mean, I might say this might be more of a defensive A, if that's such a thing.
I mean, I would
Um,
say a defensive A minus. And listen, I understand to a point. This is a horse that's been in decent form overseas. You see group twos and group threes overseas where this horse has been competitive. You see a couple of thirds. You see a win in a $60,000 handicap at Deauville 2 starts ago. I'd like him a lot more if somebody else was riding. Josh, I can't trust Jamie Spencer at all whatsoever. Of the riders that Charles Appleby trusts his horses with, I think he's one of the weakest ones. And I don't think the way American racing is run caters to what Jamie Spencer is very good at. I feel like it's been apparent the last 10, 15 years whenever he comes over here. He is not exactly the A-list rider for some of these top barns, and he's going to be probably favored because of the trainer that ships him over. I'm not saying he doesn't fit. If he runs well, I'm not going to be surprised. This just hits me as a favorite you're supposed to try to beat.
yeah, I think my skinniness in the first leg affords me some use of this horse here. So yeah, I'll be using the three. I am a little. I mean, this seems like more of looking at some of the trip notes in the PPs. Seems like more of like a forwardly placed, maybe midfield type runner. So that was going shorter. I haven't been able to look at any of the mile and a quarter, mile and a half races. But generally these horses that win overseas, that come here do pretty well. So. Um, yeah, I'm interested to see how this horse runs. It's a Dolphin, and yeah, this horse is probably going to take a ton of money because all these Europeans that ship in for Charles Appleby do. So maybe the steam will be too much, and I'll have to jump off. But lastly, the other horse I'm going to use is the Four Therapist. Coming out of that same Turf Cup race as Red Knight, who I think is both of our top picks in this race. And in the United Nations, closed and won and outkicked Red Knight. So, if uh, if we are playing the closers, if we're trying to play these off the pace horses, if you're going to use Red Knight, I think you kind of got to like Therapist at a little bit of a longer price. Mike Maker just I don't know how, but he just gets these horses to go long, and yeah, I think Therapist here. I think he's going to sit the similar trip as Red Knight, and you're going to get a little bit better of a price on him.
So my issue with therapist, yeah, issue therapist, ha ha ha.
Hmm.
Anyway, I think he is much better over very, very firm going. Keeneland's turf course is on the more lush side. It's not like Belmont or Monmouth, which tends to play very, very fast, very, very firm, and attract a different kind of horse. This is a horse that, if you look at his races, you see a really good race at Monmouth in the United Nations. Look, 8-year-old gelding winning a grade one, kudos. Fun horse. You see a race in the Pan American at Gulfstream, grade two win. Fantastic. That's a much different kind of turf course than what you see at Keeneland, or going back through his form a little bit at Churchill Downs and the Louisville when he didn't do a lot of running, or at Aqueduct for 2 starts in late 2022 when he didn't fire against state breds. I just don't think this is the kind of turf course that he wants. And if he beats me, he beats me. And look, if he does, this is an 8-year-old gelding that's banked almost $1.4 million. Heck of a story. Nice to see a horse get kept in training, clearly loving his job. But I clearly prefer Red Knight in this spot. I think this is Red Knight doing what he wants to do, as opposed to Therapist, who I think may well be a fish out of water over this turf course.
All right. So let's move on to the final leg here, race 10, 6.5 furlongs, 20K claimers, 3-year-olds and up on the dirt. And, we have a couple horses in common here, which is good or bad to see, depending on what you think here. Um, and I'll start with the number 6, which is one of the horses that we have in common, Emerald Express in this spot. You get Luis Saez aboard in on a horse that last time just kind of ran evenly. Kind of was coming from way far back. Um, you're getting a big drop in class. You're getting a horse that's run over the Keeneland track twice. Has an okay run going a while back, but at a much higher claiming price. But I just think here, when you kind of look at this race, um, this is going to be your best closer in here, and you just don't really have. I mean, outside of the three, this is kind of the opposite of what I see. I think that Emerald Express is going to get invited into this race because there isn't a ton of pace, and Luis Saez is definitely a much more aggressive rider than the likes of like a Corey Lanery or Martin Garcia. I mean, Christian Torres is fairly aggressive, but I think that Luis is going to keep this horse a little bit closer up, and this horse has definitely got the best leg kick in this field. So if Luis Saez can keep this horse a little bit closer, I think the 6 Emerald Express is going to be pretty tough to beat. I did also use the 3 Tiger Dad as an A with Christian Torres aboard. It just doesn't look like there is a ton of speed in this race. Now you're getting a horse that's been running at Assiniboia Downs, Prairie Meadows, Turf Paradise. This is the cheapest of cheap speed, but you know there just isn't really much speed in here. So maybe there's a shot that Tiger Dad just gets out there and gets loose. Going 6.5 furlongs, and
Josh talking himself into a cheap speed horse. Everybody out there, mark that off the bingo card.
but yeah, I don't know. I think Tiger Dad is going to be it is probably going to be the speed of the speed, or maybe even the only speed, and might be a little bit tough to beat in this spot. But Andrew, what did you think?
So the question I have for you, since you like Tiger Dad, if Tiger Dad was exceedingly well met in this spot, why is Robertino Diodoro also saddling number 10 Palace Kitten, who it ran reasonably well earlier this year at Ellis Park, but other than that one race, looks sort of outclassed in this particular spot? I don't know what the answer to that question is, but if a trainer saddles 2 in that spot, to me it screams that he's not overly confident about either of them, and it's more of a numbers game, especially the lower down the ladder you go as far as class wise. So I'm taking a stand against both of the Diodoro horses, and my top selection is one of my favorite handicapping angles come to life. Let's take a look at number 11, Mitres Por Ciento. Josh, this is a $20,000 claimer, right?
Hmm.
Find me the claiming price.
There is
It
none.
doesn't exist because it is a waiver claiming rule in action. This is a horse that has not been out of the barn since January, and as a result, high percentage trainer Jeffrey Engelhart is choosing to use a free shot basically with Mitres Porciento, and this is a horse that got pretty darn good before going to the sidelines. You don't have to look too far back to see a 3 race win streak where this horse showed a fair amount of early speed at a couple of different racetracks. The last time we saw him, he ran a pretty good second, beaten just a half length in the mud at Aqueduct. Clearly, something went wrong, has been away for a while, but has been working lights out. You see a number of very strong drills, including one over the Belmont training track, where this horse was 14th fastest out of 133 at the distance. Raylu Gutierrez, one of less than 5 graduates of the State University of New York at Cortland that I like, is in the saddle. Gets a good outside post position to where Raylu should have some options. Mitres Porciento is my top pick in this particular race. I'm going 3 deep to finish it off, though. And I'll also be using number 4, Herd Immunity, and number 6, Emerald Express, who Josh already talked about. Herd Immunity goes second off a little bit of a freshening for Michael Tomlinson. I thought ran pretty well last time out at Churchill Downs, second beaten just the length. 3 starts back, the horse went wire to wire. Last time out, rallied from last of 8 to darn near get up. So certainly some flexibility there with the running style. Horse that likes to win, a 7-time winner in 24 lifetime starts, certainly fits at this level and is one that I think can play the break a little bit. If there's not a lot of speed, Herd Immunity can go early and be a factor late, judging by that 3-back effort. If there is some speed, Joe Rocco can take back and make one run. I like that flexibility, especially in a race where there's not a lot in the way of proven running styles. So it's certainly a rider's race. And speaking of a rider's race, we would be remiss not to talk about the irony involved with horse number 5, Nepotism. Owned and trained by Steve Asmussen, ridden by Keith Asmussen. No disrespect to Keith, he's a decent jockey, but that's low hanging fruit that we just needed to address before we went on and talked about our tickets in detail because sometimes the jokes write themselves, people.
Yeah. So you're not using either of the Diodoros, but
Nope.
as my bees, I am using the 10 Palace Kitten as well. And I am also using your 11, Mi Tres por Ciento. Um, my only concern with the 11 is the post being kind of stuck out wide. And while I agree about running 2, you wonder why he's running 2. Both the 10 and the 6 plot out really, really well on optics, which is why I'm using both of them. But 10 and 11 are only going to make my tickets as Bs. I'll be I will be definitely mostly through the 3 and the 6.
Well, we've got the 6 in common at least. And honestly, through this sequence, we've got a fair bit in common, which I know shocks a lot of longtime viewers and listeners who expect us to just have completely different viewpoints on a race and both of us to somehow be wrong more often than not.
Yep. But here's your ticket here, Andrew. You got a $67.50 play.
Yep, it's a fun valuation because good luck trying to duplicate that setup where you're going 3 by 5 by 3 by 1 by 3. And I'm trying to get some value out of Red Knight. I think we are going to get something close to that 9 to 2 morning line price. Anything above 7 to 2 hits me as an overlay, and I will have a significant win bet on that one in that particular spot. But if we're able to get a price or two home around Red Knight to where we can turn this 67.50 into, say, a grand, 1,200, that's an odds boost right there that I will be glad to take. I like Red Knight a lot, and the more I look at the race, the more that I like him, which is a sign that you should single. And in a sequence where there's a lot of big fields and not a lot in the way of heavy favorites, those horses are much appreciated. So building around Red Knight, and as you can see, gone fairly deep in some of the other legs, including 5 deep in the 7th. If you get knocked out early, or if a pick 5 is just too expensive for you with those prices, you can play the late pick 4 starting in race number 7, and that's a $22.50 play, 5 by 3 by 1 by 3. So a little more economical there if 67.50 is a little bit beyond your budget.
Yep, and that's 178 with 258 911 with 469 with 2 with 4611 $67.50 for the pick 5. I am, I A B this. So I am 6 with 1 8 as B's, 1 8 with 3 as a B, 4 9 with 2 7 as B's, 2 3 4 all A's there, and then end it with 3 6 with the 10 and 11 as B's. I don't have that structure totaled up, and I usually leverage my A's, so do with that what you will. But Andrew, it's great to talk to you. We'll definitely have a ton of stuff coming up with Breeders' Cup just a couple weeks away. But what you got going on this weekend?
So, lots of fun stuff going on. It is my fiance's grandfather's birthday on Saturday. So, that's going to be a lot of fun. Going to be a lot of food consumed on Saturday, to be sure. So, that'll always be a blast. And love spending time with her family. Got my usual bowling league. And Josh, I've got a story for you that I've been saving.
Uh oh,
Josh, someone did something you're not supposed to do.
what's that?
You don't tug on Superman's cape. You don't spit into the wind. You don't pull the mask off the old Lone Ranger. And you don't piss me off at a bowling alley. So last week, I bowl in a Thursday night league up here in Northern California. We bowled against the designated frat house team. Bunch of overgrown people who think they're still college students and drink accordingly. Well, their leadoff bowler shot a smooth 107 the first game, doubled to start the second game, and tried to get chirpy with me. I ran out the second strike in a row, aced the third strike in a row off my hand, knew it was good. I came off the approach and I gave him the most exaggerated Tiger Woods stare that I've ever given anyone. And the other four guys on the other team looked at each other and went, oh shit. I had the front seven, shot 254. This guy keeps talking. He keeps talking. And I looked at the other team's captain, who I like because they run the card game every week that I play. You throw $1 in, you pick up a whole bunch of cards for strikes and spares and splits and stuff, and whoever has the best 5-card poker hand wins the pot. I looked at the captain and I went, Adam, get your boy. Get your boy. Well, I had the front seven in the second game. I had the front five in the third game. I finished with a 691 series, which is a career high. And look, I'm a low 180s average. I'm nothing great. I'm okay. But 691 is not something I'm supposed to shoot. And I shot it because this guy just would not stop running his mouth. These things just happen to me. I don't ask for them to happen. I don't do anything to inflict them upon myself. They just happen. It's the let him shoot it guy. It's the bye bye Coach K guy. And it's this guy who needed to do some learning. And he did some learning, I'm happy to say. So I figured you'd get a kick out of that story. And hopefully some of our listeners out there do too. I don't know what the crossover is between horse racing and bowling, but we're hitting that niche, Josh, and we're hitting it hard.
Did he say let him shoot it?
No, but he kept talking. Like, dude's averaging 140. He shot 107 the first game. I damn near challenged him if you wanted to like bowl for money in the third game. Like, listen, you're talking this much, $1 a pin. Let's go. But probably fortunately for him, I didn't do that. He came up to me afterwards and he gave me a hug. And it's not like he's a bad guy. He just, got out over his skis a little bit. But he hugged me and I ominously said, don't piss me off. Don't piss me off.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us. Obviously, you can check us out at onthewronglead.com at wrong_lead. I just posted a video earlier today or earlier last night, depending when you're listening to this, with John Piasek talking about Maryland Millions. Maryland Million Day on Saturday. We took a look at 4 of the stakes races there on that card. You can check that out on the On the Wrong Lead YouTube, and I will be getting it on the podcast feed probably around the same time this drops out. So, yeah, uh, we'll be back next week with another episode of Drinking Champagne. We'll be live on Thursday night with a stream. We have no idea what we're gonna do yet, but I'm sure we'll make something up and it'll be fun. But Andrew, have a good weekend, man.
Yeah, you too, man. That's fun. Make some money on Friday.
There we go.